Well, when we look at the Western reports or their allegations against China vis-à-vis Xinjiang, for example, they are driven by several things. One is that for the past several years, the United States and the Western countries together are talking about the collapse of China. They actually want to engineer the collapse of China. They hope that if China collapses, they can carve up China into several pieces. So I think when you talk about the Uyghurs, you need to ask yourself, what are you really up to? Are you really supporting the legitimate interests of the Uyghur people, for example, improving their living standards, sending their schools to a better school, and lining up better employment opportunities, for example? Or, for example, you are scheming about the so-called independence of Xinjiang, which is dead before you even start to talk about. So I think the Western countries in general should really come up to their own conclusion. What do you want to do with Xinjiang? Are you really talking about the so-called independence of Xinjiang? And you will never achieve that. So stop bothering and stop wasting your time and resources at all. Well, human rights are very important. I care about human rights very much. Trained as a lawyer, I always emphasize the importance of human rights. But on the other hand, human rights in any country, anywhere in the world, do not exist in a vacuum. Human rights exists always in an overall social context. And rights, on the one hand, which are very important, should always be viewed relative to your obligations, for example. These two cannot be separated. They should always coexist with each other. If you are talking about human rights, we are together. But if you want to use or weaponize human rights as an excuse to destabilize the situation in Xinjiang, you are my enemy. So it really depends, what do you mean by human rights? Are you really genuinely interested in human rights? Or you think you can use human rights as a convenient way to destabilize China, or even viciously and evilly try to separate Xinjiang away from China? So tell me what exactly you are really up to, and then we can deal with you one way or the other way. And just imagine if Afghanistan borders with England, holy cow, I would say the British Parliament probably will do nothing but to try to deter any spillover of terrorism from Afghanistan, which borders England, for example, into England or any part of Great Britain. So let's be honest about what you are talking about. And how can we tolerate this? How can we not expect that the Chinese government stand firm and deal with this spillover of extremism and terrorism from Afghanistan to Xinjiang, or to allow the spillover to continue to spill over into the rest of China? So I think when I hear people talk about human rights in Xinjiang, the first and most important way to protect human rights in Xinjiang is to make sure that the spillover of terrorism and radicalization and extremism in Afghanistan is stopped. That's number one. Number two is that no one should be allowed to bring extremism, separatism, and radicalization from any other parts of the world into Xinjiang or into any other part of China, because we do not want to have extremism in our country or radicalization or terrorism. We want to have peace and stability. We want to treat development as the hard truth. We want the totality of the Chinese people, all together, 1.4 billion of us, move forward in peace and stability rather than being dragged by radicalization and extremism. Therefore, for anyone in the West, government officials, military leaders, civil leaders, corporate leaders, if you really care about Xinjiang, we should be on the same page. But if you want to weaponize so-called human rights or any other thing, then you may be considered as public enemy number one, because what you are doing is nothing short of destabilizing Xinjiang and destabilizing China and try to divide China into 6 or 7 countries. You will never succeed in your endeavor. Can you believe it? It's in the first century, before the birth of Jesus Christ, Xinjiang was part of China. Therefore, throughout the millennium, China's national fortune went up and down, ebb and flow, etc. That's for sure. But Xinjiang, as far as China is concerned, has always been a very important and inalienable part of China. So don't think that, wow, China and Xinjiang were separate or we were different from each other. No, we are together. We are together throughout the ages, and keep in mind, before the time of Jesus Christ, Xinjiang was already part of China. That's number one. Number two is that anyone who loves Xinjiang should go there for a visit and see Xinjiang with your own eyes. And given the huge size of Xinjiang, you should budget not just one trip, possibly 6 trips or 10 trips, spanning over 3 years or 5 years. And if you really want to do that, I will assure you, you'll be fascinated by the beauty and the attractiveness and the magnetism of Xinjiang, because you will see Xinjiang today in peace, in prosperity, and people enjoy the harmony, for example. And we know our mission. We want to make sure no one in Xinjiang is left behind. We want to make sure no girl in Xinjiang, including girls in the Uyghur families, will be prevented from going to school. All girls should enjoy their constitutional right of being educated. And anyone who wants to deprive a girl in any family, including in the Uyghur family, from going to school will be considered as engaged in a criminal activity, because the Chinese law mandates every kid should be educated. So I think let's talk about the realities. If you talk about preventing a girl from going to school, as the Taliban did in Afghanistan, you will not be welcome. But if you talk about equal education for all, boys as well as girls, Han Chinese kids as well as all the other ethnic families, including the Uyghurs, then we are on the same page. Therefore, let's really be honest. If you pretend that Xinjiang does not exist, or if you pretend that Xinjiang is not part of China, then you lose your own bearing. But if you believe there is one China and Xinjiang is very much a part of China, and the Uyghurs are one of the 56 nationalities in China as a whole, and their human rights are fully protected, but if you want to weaponize human rights to use this fabricated human rights abuses as a way to split China, to bring about the separatism of Xinjiang from China, you will never succeed. Further, I think, as of today, people in Xinjiang no longer live in fear of terrorism, because terrorism has been very much contained. They were fought off through what? Through the collective unity of the Chinese nation as a whole. And I mention this as a very important point, because I would say no one in China, no one among our 1.4 billion people of 56 nationalities, no one wants to live in fear of terrorism and radicalization. We all want to live in peace. We want to live in harmony with our neighbors, despite or regardless of our differences. So I think the economic transformation speaks very eloquently for itself. It is only the fact that there are people in the world who pretend to be deaf, who pretend that they don't have eyes, who pretend that they cannot be dazzled by the transformation in Xinjiang, that keeps talking about the allegations about Xinjiang. If you are real, if you are a journalist, if you are really professionally as a reporter, I'll be happy to escort you to Xinjiang and travel throughout the vastness in Xinjiang with you and help you to really better understand Xinjiang. What really drives many Western countries, and the Western media in particular, is nothing short of their motivation of achieving separatism for Xinjiang, pulling Xinjiang away from China. So I would say these are evil-minded people, evil-minded political forces. They don't care about the overall national feeling of the 1.4 billion people, including me. We do want to have a unified China. Why? Because a unified China will make China stronger, will make China as a better force, stronger force, defending peace and development in the world for the benefit of mankind as a whole. Why do they want to separate China? Why do they want to split China into 7 countries, as they normally would say? Because they mean evil for the Chinese people. They want to plunge us into the abyss of national disaster and complete national collapse. They even don't bother to ask people like me whether they would achieve their goal. Let me tell you, over my dead body, you can never achieve that goal. Because people like me, 1.4 billion of us, will never allow that to happen. We want to have one single China, united, indivisible, and always do the good thing, that is, maintaining peace, maintaining stability, focusing on economic development, creating win-win situation for everyone in China and between China and the rest of the world, and make sure peace prevails and free trade will be fully and forcibly defended rather than being trampled upon. Well, I first visited Xinjiang as early as in 1985, and subsequently I visited Xinjiang multiple times. First of all, Xinjiang is very much united as an autonomous region, which is part of China. And I think people really enjoy the fact that Xinjiang is being opened up more and more to all the neighboring countries and becoming a hub of connectivity. So Xinjiang's importance on the Eurasian continent is becoming more and more important. That's number one. I believe in the AI age, China will really excel and stand out in greater and extraordinary splendor. So let's say, Xinjiang, you are bright, you are optimistic, and your future will outshine any so-called pessimism preached by other countries. And Xinjiang will always be a proud part of China, and the Uyghurs will always be a very important part and very proud part of the overall Chinese ethnic composition, including 56 different ethnic groups altogether.